It is there now. Sitting here. This is yours. I don't know. This is yours. I said it's improving. I don't know how.
The problem solver.
I would now request our President, Shri N.G. Khaitan, Chamber President of the Chamber, to present a bouquet of flowers to Dr. Kunal Sarkar and formally welcome him to the talk.
Thank you very much. We'll keep it.
I would now request Shri Khaitan to commence today's program with his welcome address.
We normally the chamber sends me a text speech before I start introduction. Today it was not sent, but in any event, I never speak on the text speech which the chamber sends me. Sir, I think I first must compliment Renuka ji for inviting you. I mean, this is the first time actually we speak on business, we speak on various aspects of business, on various issues connected with business. I've been telling Mr. Khandelwal to have a conclave on medicine, because I tell you why. Because we took a delegation to Bangladesh, and a lot of people are coming from Bangladesh. So I was telling him that, we would, and we are going to open a Bangladesh desk here. We have entered into an agreement. So in order to facilitate the patients from Bangladesh and connect them to the right doctor. So I said we need to do that, and because that's the one thing which we want to do from our chamber. But I think of all the persons present here, I think the most known and person is Mr. Sarkar. So he needs no introduction. So Renuka ji's job of Renuka ji to introduce Dr. Sarkar, but I think does he really needs an introduction? I really don't know.
No.
But I must tell you one thing: he's more than a doctor. I mean, he's a debater of the highest order. And when you are a debater of the highest order, you can understand the knowledge he must be having on various, not only on medicine, but on different aspects of life. It's not just confined to medicine. I mean, today, while sitting there, we were discussing on many issues about the arrest of Mr. Kejriwal, and he had few things to say about that also. So the knowledge is very wide and vast. And Dil to aisa hai, the dil is something which is most precious to our heart. When you fall in love, you give dil to somebody. So dil is something which is very precious to our heart. And, we keep on hearing, sir, that, I mean, for me also, I'm suffering from diabetes. I suffer from high tension pressure. And what do? I mean, I do exercise and I always keep a sorbitate tablet by my side in the bed. So that, I am so scared that, nothing, though my parameters of the blood is absolutely regular, but then, that scare, I mean, that, you scare of taking care of your heart, and because we see so much people dying out of heart attack, and, we have the diabetes capital of the world. I mean, so the heart is so important to us. Like this misinformation that whether you should eat white egg or whether you should eat yellow with the egg or not. The Time magazine 3 years back came out with a full article where he said, no, why should you not eat yellow of the egg? You should eat yellow of the egg. It's not harmful to your cholesterol. If you remember, sir, that full page article club. And since then I started eating with yellow egg. But again, I was told that I'm again making a mistake. You should go to the white egg. So I think you will be the best person to guide us, what should we do? What should be our lifestyle? So much of misinformation about our heart. I mean, अगर दिल किसी को दिए हैं तो फिर उसको बचा के रखना होगा ना सर. So I thought, Renuka ji, I think you will be the best person. We are all waiting to hear him. And sir, one thing I must tell you, that our chamber is one of the largest chambers in Eastern India. We have over 34 associations as our member, and the membership of that association covers over 1 lakh people. So, and then we have a direct membership of 1800 corporate and non-corporate. So therefore, we have a very large membership on all spheres on all branches, whether it's medicine, whether it's services, whether it's trade. And I don't know whether you have been to our chambers before or not. I doubt that you have been to our chambers. This is our new building, and it's known as Bharat Chambers building, which was inaugurated by the President of India. Which year was it, Kika? 2016. So we are 8 years young, and with this, Renuka ji, I would like you to introduce in whatever shorter way. Kunal.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Sarkar, Mr. Khaitan, my colleagues in the committee of the chamber and the ladies forum, guests and friends. Good namaste, good evening, and a warm welcome to our event today. I consider it to be a pleasure and privilege to introduce our guest in chief today. Dr. Kunal Sarkar is one of the most reputed cardiac surgeons of our country and needs no introduction. Therefore, I will be brief. With almost 4 decades of unwavering dedication to patient care, Dr. Sarkar stands as a beacon of excellence in the field of cardiac surgery. With his rich surgical expertise and innovative approach, Dr. Sarkar has offered a whole new lease of life to his patients through the years. An outstanding scholar, Dr. Sarkar graduated from the Calcutta Medical College with gold medal in surgery. He later worked and trained in the cardiac surgery at St. Mary's Hospital, UK, for more than 10 years. He is a former faculty of the Imperial College, London. Dr. Sarkar is associated with the academic activities of the European Association of Cardiothoracic Surgery and the Indian Association of Cardiovascular and Thoracic Surgeons. Before joining Medica Hospitals, Dr. Sarkar was for long associated with the Narayana Hridayalaya group of hospitals as the Vice President and Chief Cardiac Surgeon of Rabindranath Tagore International Institute of Cardiac Sciences, Kolkata. As a respected thought leader, Dr. Sarkar's influence extends far beyond the operating room. With extensive knowledge in literature, history, politics, and socio-economic policies, Dr. Sarkar is a passionate debater, orator, and writer. He is the president of the Calcutta Debating Circle and chairs the largest live debate in India during Calcutta's Festival of the Spoken Word. In his commitment towards advancing medical knowledge and the status of healthcare in India, Dr. Sarkar authored his first book, The Sickness of Health. He strongly believes in making healthcare accessible in India and has conducted more than 500 free health camps across Bengal. Besides, he started the health app Asclepia Health for providing exclusive medical guidance to patients. Friends, in today's day and age of using hashtags and acronyms, a term most often used is FOMO, which is short for fear of missing out. The anxiety resulting from FOMO more than often takes a toll on our mental and physical well-being as we exhaust ourselves in multitasking and putting too much stress on our vital organs, especially our heart. Through social media, we try to inculcate such habits that in the long run prove to be fatal. For instance, working out and other forms of physical activities have been given a lot of importance for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. However, high-intensity exercise have often led to heart attacks. Besides, regular exercise in the morning with sedentary behavior throughout the day is not effective in reducing the risk of getting heart problems. Women are generally said to get heart disease about 10 years later than men do. But heart disease is one of the leading causes of death in women. Is it because of the lowering of the estrogen hormones post-menopause? I would request Dr. Sarkar to kindly clarify. Besides, middle age is also a time when women tend to develop other risk factors for heart disease, such as high blood pressure. According to research, preeclampsia during pregnancy also raises the risk of developing coronary heart disease later in life. I would request Dr. Sarkar to kindly address these and other issues in his talk. With these words, I now request Dr. Kunal Sarkar, our guest in chief, to commence his talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shall I speak from here?
Yeah, please.
Hello, am I audible? Right. Yes. Sir, Mr. Khaitan, Renuka-ji, thank you ever so much. I was reasonably lucky in my younger days because when I had first arrived in England, I suddenly found myself to be very popular, frequently invited to the weekend bashes, and I used to be the only, in those days we were young, Rajuda, right? So I used to be a reasonably young doctor in a company of about 15 to 20 nurses, pretty nurses. So that used to make me wonder why, what has befallen us? The little old mediocre Bengali, what's happened to that? And that was solely attributed to the fact that I was a teetotaler and the only one in his senses at 2 o'clock in the morning who could drive the others home, right? So having had an opportunity to speak to the ladies forum and surrounded by that many ladies instills in me a sense of deja vu. So thank you, ma'am. Thanks to all of you for sparing your time this evening to listen to this talk. And I'll try to address some of your questions. And sir, you ask whether a doctor has been to a chamber of commerce. You see, doctors, A, being deprived and B, being allergic to wealth, are not allowed anywhere, with the exception of Dr. Devi Shetty, is not allowed anywhere near during a chamber of commerce, nor do we qualify for it. Right? Okay. Thank you again to the chamber. Now, I'm in a bit of a sort of long distance conversation because the presentation is being run from there. Now, if you'll simply look at our bodies, the stuff that we are made of, it depends on how you are counting it. The human body has something like about 79 to 80 organ systems. And of all the organ systems, we are made up of something like 50 trillion cells. And these cells organize themselves into different organ systems. You have the brain, the lungs, the kidney, the eyes, and so on and so forth. But the heart is rather exceptional, because everything that nature, God, whoever you believed in, devised in us, this is the only tissue, this is the only mass of cells which has to go on working from life to death without a moment's rest. So why did nature do this? We still haven't got an answer for it. So the time we have spent one day, 24 hours, 24 hours is equal to 100,000 heartbeats. By the time we've been 50 years of age, is about 300 crore heartbeats. And this tremendous amount of energy that is expended carries no charge, no sockets, no charging cable, and this entire mass of energy, which works relentlessly for the lifespan of the organism, simply derives its own energy from blood. So that is where all the energy comes from. Next slide. Next slide, please change the slide. Next slide, arrow down. You see, of all the organs in the human body, we had a fair idea. I don't want to take a deep dive in the history of medicine, but history of medicine is a very interesting subject. And the so-called modern medicine, as you know of today, basically dawned from the time of Hippocrates in 5th century BC. And as the rest of the Greek republics were talking about the principles, you had Socrates, Plato, etc., on the very complex issues of philosophy, democracy, etc. There was a little fellow called Hippocrates in a small island who first enunciated the principles of what we know today as modern medicine. As time goes on, we gained a fair bit of idea. People knew what the stomach does. People had a rough idea what to do with the brain. But people, the longest in the history of humanity, we had to wait a very long time to get a vague idea of what the heart actually does. Our idea about the heart basically is, it's like target practice. People knew that you stick a knife in the chest, the chap opposite to you would die instantaneously. And because the stuff that came out of the chest, when you stuck a knife in the chest, was red and warm, the association of love, warmth, etc. with the heart. And it took us a very long time to put the puzzle of human circulation and what the heart was doing together. So much so, if you look back, somewhere, say in the 10th, 11th centuries, a lot of great research was done by the Islamic scientists. You think of places like Tehran, Baghdad, Damascus today. You think of terrorism, Gaza, Israel, fighting, rubble, ruins. But that was the cradle in the 9th and 10th century. Islamic scientists like Ibn Sina, Al-Nafis. So they nurtured a lot of it, but still the mystery of the heart was not really fathomed, and we almost gave up. And where the scientists gave up, the artists took it up. And the fact that we at all knew anything about the heart coming to the so-called modern times of today is due to the credit of these two gentlemen. And the one you see on the right is somebody's photograph you've seen very often, the great Leonardo da Vinci, the polymath of the latter half of the Italian Renaissance, which is called the Quattrocento, and his great rival. Leonardo da Vinci was about 23, 24 years older than Michelangelo. So like you have a young star fading and the older star fading and the young star coming. So when Michelangelo came into the Florentine art world, Da Vinci was old and mature. He was sick. People remember Da Vinci for the Mona Lisa. But Leonardo da Vinci, in his life of about 70 plus years, had only painted 25 canvases, 25 or 26 canvases. So Da Vinci used to think himself as a scientist, an engineer. He was looking at everything, and he's done a lot of work on interrogating the human heart, the cardiac anatomy. So for those of you who've been to Milan or would go to Milan in the near future, so you go to the Cathedral of Santa Maria della Grazia and you see the painting of the Last Supper. It's not a painting. Last Supper is not a painting, it's a fresco. So the Last Supper hangs from the wall of Santa Maria in Milan. And as Da Vinci was painting Last Supper, he really had no mind on painting then. He was deeply into the study of human anatomy. So on his folio, as his juniors would paint, this is Da Vinci's own drawing of the human heart. So if he applied for the NEET exam, he would have scored pretty well. Because even a poor man, I don't know what scandal he would have faced, but even if you go by the standards of the NEET exam, it's a pretty accurate representation of the human heart. Da Vinci died in 1560 something. So this is Da Vinci when he's already 50 plus, and he didn't give up. So he persisted looking at the human heart, and then we were able to put bits of the puzzle together. Next slide, please. And the chap who really cracked it, it's like children, solving the Rubik's Cube. You had a pump, you had blood going out, you had blood coming back, and the entire puzzle of human circulation was actually solved by this shy young man called William Harvey. William Harvey then was a 25-year-old research scholar in the University of Bologna, and he actually put the whole bits he interconnected the dots. He put it all together, and he was so shy that he did not publish his thesis for 1.5 years. So for 1.5 years, his thesis lay in the drawer, and finally somebody said that, don't you realize that you just connected the puzzle of human circulation? He said, yes, I know, but I'm just a bit afraid to come out with it. He said, come out and say, and thereafter, we made sense of the human circulatory system. William Harvey, like you have Vivekananda and Rabindranath staying within 1.5 kilometers of one another. So the great Harvey was a neighbor of the great Isaac Newton. So you visit England, you will see that the villages of William Harvey and Isaac Newton were almost, they were shake hand distance from one another. And within a span of 2 years, Harvey discovers circulation and Newton discovers gravitation calculus. Newton did all his work by the time he was 27. He lived up to 72. He did nothing from 27 onwards. Everything, optics, prism, light, calculus, everything. Newton had finished his life's accomplishments when 27 years of age. The rest of the time he became bananas, he did nothing. So from the time of William Harvey, we were able to know that what our system actually does. But, next slide. This system, as we told you about the heart, it's a fantastic piece of organ, beats 60 to 72 times a minute, 100,000 times per day. Brilliant as it is, but like any brilliant machine, this machine will also suffer periods of breakdown. And it is this breakdown of this organ, because the trouble with where human evolution has stopped so far is, it has not, like if you have a load shedding at home, you have a backup, you have a generator, you have an inverter. but the human circulation still doesn't have a backup. Your brain has a backup. If you have the right lobe gone, the left lobe will take over. You have the right lung gone, the left lung will take over. But human circulation is still tremendously dependent on the single organ. And that is why we are compelled to think that this will also suffer breakdown time and again. And certain terms comes back to us repeatedly. We use terms like angina, chest pain. What does it actually mean? It just actually means angina is the word which actually means pain. And when you have pain in the chest, the Latin used to call it angina pectoris. So when you try to get chest pain, the true Latin for it is angina pectoris. It means the heart is in a problematic state, so you're getting pain from the chest. And when that becomes more severe, that the heart cannot tolerate it anymore, a part of the heart muscle actually suffers damage. So that is the advanced stage of the chest pain, that we call it myocardial infarction. Infarction is not Latin, it's a Greek term. To infarct means to die. So when you say infarcted, MI, we say MI, heart attack hua hai, AMI hua hai. So it basically means a part of the heart muscle is dead. Next slide, please. Now, heart problems, heart attack, etc., is by no means a new disease. It's by no means a new disease. A few years back, there were medical forensic researchers from Italy who took a couple of mummies out of the Egyptian tombs of the New Kingdom and looked at, they had interesting scans done. And through these mummies, you could even detect coronary artery disease. So if you look at the Egyptian 4th kingdom, 5th kingdom, you were really looking at, the 7th, 8th century BC. So it's not a new disease, but the question may be that maybe the incidence is increasing. So we cannot say it's a new disease in that sense. Next slide. Now, what is the trouble? The trouble exactly that is happening is a trouble that all of us are accustomed to. Is basically what is happening is a supply side problem. So, nature or God was very unkind to us in one way. The next time you see a bird on your windowsill, or you see a great big crocodile, a snake, a reptile, you see every animal, whether it is a marine animal or a land animal, every animal has to have a circulatory system, albeit a little bit different. They all have hearts. But till we come to the mammals, and especially the advanced mammals like ourselves, what used to happen is, if you look at the heart of a snake or a heart of a crocodile, their heart has a lot of sponges. It's like a sponge. So as blood was coming in and out of the heart muscle itself used to soak the blood up. Easy, no arteries required, nothing. So it soaked the blood up, fine. And that is how the heart used to go on. So you never hear of a crocodile getting a heart attack or a snake getting a heart attack. But then, the gentleman or the lady upstairs who was doing our product designing thought that about 120,000 years ago, by the time the model of the modern anatomical human being was designed, they thought, it's time that we become clever. It's like iPhone, 12, 13, 14, 15. So by the time we were being designed, nature thought it's time to show how clever I can be. So instead of blood going to the heart through like a sponge type mechanism, arteries appeared, arteries in the heart. You had arteries for the rest of the body. The heart never had separate arteries. So nature thought it was being very clever, and it gave us arteries for the heart, because by that time, even though I'm in a chamber of commerce, nature had not yet heard of Marlboro, Indian Tobacco Company, Dalda, Samosa, etc. That had not made an appearance in human history. So nature gifted us with a cardinal mistake. It gave arteries to the human heart. So if nature did not make that mistake, so like a snake or a crocodile, you and I would also have never had a heart attack. So why do we have it? Because we have these pipes. And why are these pipes a double-edged sword? Because it was found out that these pipes, like the pipes at home, can get sedimentation, whether you call it dirt, sediment, whatever. And by simple law of physics, narrower the pipe, lesser is the supply. Right? So it's a simple supply side problem. Narrower the pipe, lesser is the supply. And our body will tolerate up to a certain limit and no more. And when it goes beyond toleration, then the story gets out of hand. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the heart, this thing on you see on the right hand side, which looks like a sort of a cube of pork. It's not a cube of pork. It's actually the slice of a heart muscle. Now, how thick is a heart muscle? The next time when you put butter on your piece of bread, so if you put 1.5 pieces of bread together, that is the thickness of the left side of the heart muscle, because the left side pumps more. So the left side is thicker, which we are usually more concerned with. So you have a supply line which is actually supplying the muscle. And there were two problems with the heart muscle. So number one, we said that in trying to be very clever, we have endangered ourselves. We've given ourselves arteries. And the second problem, I think the monitors have, and this power lining kichu problem. And the second problem basically is that this very precious heart muscle you are looking at, this is the only muscle in the entire, this is the only tissue in the entire human body which does not know to regenerate. If you cut your skin grows. You have a haircut, the hair grows back. You cut your nail, the nails go back. You have cirrhosis, you have hepatitis, the liver grows back. Even brain regenerates to a certain extent. But once again, God was so unkind with heart muscle. In adult life, if you have 100 heart muscle, we have to walk to our graves with 100 heart muscle. If you've lost 50, you've lost for them forever. So another thing to remember is, so why all this rush, all this hurry, check out, do things quickly. If you're in trouble, get it fixed. So the entire reason that we try to instill a sense of urgency in people is simply because a heart muscle does not regenerate. I think the monitors are getting tired, right? Next slide. They're not used to. So there's a video. Play this, please. So what is basic? Go back. Just play the video. Allow the video. Cursor play karo. Play it? Yes, that's a big blow for freedom. Thank you. Right. So what is basically happening? When we talk about a heart attack, you see, it is not as if that in a chronic way, blood is not like water. Blood is not like this fluid. Blood is not a clear fluid. It's actually like lassi. It's a suspension. There are chemicals, there are cells, there are big particles, but the blood is happily carrying all these particles in a uniform state of suspension. Now, when the ratio alters, then you have the sediments appearing inside the wall of the blood vessels. And what understanding we have got in recent times is, it is not only a process of mechanical occlusion. As it appears, you will remember getting, we've had boils in our hands when you get infection, and suddenly one of these boils bursts, like the pus comes out. So these deposits inside the heart, they are also like they are inflamed. It's like an abscess inside. So it is staying there quiet, and given a moment, why does it happen? Why has it suddenly happened at 2 o'clock in the morning? Why has it happened at 12 in midnight and not anywhere else? We do not know. So what will happen is like an abscess bursting. So this plaque, which has a soft core inside, so what gives you a sudden heart attack? The pipe has been narrow for a long time. So why did I suddenly get chest pain or a crashing heart attack at Monday 2 a.m.? It is simply because that deposit has burst. And because it has burst, all the garbage has gone and blocked the pipe completely. So in medical terminology, there's a term for it, we call it plaque rupture. And when plaque rupture happens, the bit of the heart muscle where the supply is affected, that is dead. So that is myocardial infarction. And why has it happened all of a sudden? It has happened all of a sudden because it is that moment when the plaque goes pop and all the garbage comes out of it, and suddenly it has blocked a vital part of the pipeline, that we get a sudden heart attack. And for us doctors, we are still pretty bad in weather forecasting. It's like Alipur telling me it's going to rain every day, every day, every day. I can't tell all of you, you're going to have a heart attack every day, every day, every day. As it is, we get beaten up. So, we'll get beaten up. We'll get beaten up even more. But the part of science, on a more serious note, that still escapes us today is we still can't predict. When you're in the chronic state, I'm getting chest pain, when I walk, I get breathless. So the doctor can diagnose and tell you pretty certainly that, look, this is coming from the heart. I've done so many tests. We'll discuss it in a minute. But we still are very bad in weather forecasting. For us to tell you that, okay, this is the condition, I hear people saying that you will be okay for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, is total rubbish. Total rubbish. Still, there are no tests, there are no indicators that allow us to predict the acute episode. Probably someday we are going to get there, not yet. Next slide. In India, I don't know how many of you know, we have a population of 140 crore people. You know how many people die in India every day? India has a daily death rate of 45,000 people. That's pretty average. That's the average death rate in India. We have about 1.5 lakh heart attacks every day, 24 hours. So 1.5 lakh heart attacks every day, and of which you have about 20,000 people who will not get back home. Right. And how many are we able to treat? As doctors, we are not at all proud of this statistic. Less than 25% get any decent treatment, and of which about 30% are in cities. So it's not uncommon that people succumb to a heart attack without sensible treatment in cities. And 10% of them are what is called true sudden deaths, cardiac sudden deaths. So it's still a big problem area as far as the death demography is concerned. Next slide. We started getting very serious. Any good thing or bad thing necessarily starts from America, right? So all this human curiosity, heart, diet, hypertension, diabetes, it is one death that triggered all this. One death, the death of one person. And that is on the 12th of April, 1945, almost in full view of the US Congress, Franklin Roosevelt collapsed and succumbed to a heart attack. And if you correlate your chronology, think of the history. What was happening in the world in 1945? US had just won the Second World War. You had beaten Hitler black and blue. So, US was like the Superman of the world. And in the midst of all this celebration, Franklin Roosevelt, who really commanded US brilliantly, him and Eisenhower. Anyway, so he dies. And as Americans were thinking they were invincible, even the Nazis couldn't touch them, the heart tells a different story. And thereafter, the good thing was that thereafter, a lot of funds were committed by United States to research. So that is the first time in the story of medicine that we started behaving, because we behave like plumbers most of the time. We are fixing defects and stitching wounds. But it is the first time in civilization that people dedicated a lot of research fund. And, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of statistics. Go to the next slide. So 20 odd miles just outside of Boston is a little town called Framingham. So 10,000 odd people were chosen in the 1950s from this little town of Framingham, and people studied them for a full 10 years. What was the effect of hypertension? What was the effect of blood sugar? And all these things. So later on, all these study reports were put together, and then obviously, subsequently, a lot more work happened. So the Framingham study after the death of Franklin Roosevelt is something that stimulated, that triggered this area of research. Next slide. Next slide. So I'm just going to run through very briefly a few things for you that, some of the things we know of in terms of preventive factors, what studies like Framingham, and there has been thousands and thousands of studies later on. Now, where does our ideas, our state of knowledge stands now? Now, first of all, do not make a villain out of cholesterol. So those of you who are obviously around my age, Rajuda's time and before, so remember our Hindi movie and its villains and vamps. So, we have made a villain out of cholesterol. But do remember, cholesterol is a very vital ingredient for the human body. If your cholesterol level was 10, you would probably melt away, you will die, because there is no human cell without cholesterol. It's the basic unit of life. When nature devised life, when nature designed the human cell, cholesterol was one of the fundamental parts of it. But yes, we do admit that too much of it is bad. So as we told you, if blood was like a lassi, you want to have a well-made lassi. So if the various components of cholesterol gets out of proportion, therein comes the problem. The other question that many of us have is, what is all this hanky-panky going on about HDL, LDL, triglycerides, all these things? Well, it'll take me a good half an hour. I have a couple of YouTube videos on it. You can watch it. What does all these things mean? You see, blood is basically, you can get the concept, then you will understand it. Blood is basically a water-based liquid, right? So it is aqueous. Fat doesn't dissolve in water. Okay. So blood is a water-based liquid. Fats are essential for the human body. It's there in the nature, it's there in the foodstuffs. You will inevitably take in some fats. So how does the body handle fat? So what nature devised was that nature cannot transport raw fats through blood. Then your whole circulation will be like a sludge. It'll stop. So nature devised that all these fats were really like your gift wrap, little parcels. So these fats had layers around them, whereby the fats were made either water soluble or transportable. So these are little particles, all of different sizes. So high density has one size, low density has the other, and it has a lot to do with who is working hard to process all the fat particles. The liver. The liver is the workhouse. It's working overtime to do all this processing. So HDL, LDL all refers to whether it is going inside the liver or it is coming out of the liver. People say HDL is very good cholesterol, etc. It's not because it is very pretty or singing songs to you, but simply because if it is in the HDL shape, it is entering the liver. So it will not be floating free in the blood. So people said, happy, HDL enters the liver, so which means it helps me. Yes, it is true. The simplification is, it is helping to keep the blood cholesterol levels low. That is why HDL is considered good. And why are we so damn scared about LDL? Because LDL is coming out of the liver. It's like your entry visa and exit visa. So we are concerned about LDL particle size, because that is how liver puts the fat out in the blood. So again, if you have too much of it, this deposition starts. Next slide. We have mentioned diabetes. What is the funniest thing about diabetes? We still do not know what diabetes is. What is diabetes? Is it a disease of blood sugar? It is not. Sugar is an indicator with which diabetes is measured. Diabetes, why are we really concerned about diabetes? This is not T20 cricket. So whether your sugar is 178 or 180, what does it matter? It doesn't matter anything to the body. But what matters is the collateral damage that is happening in the microcirculation. So whether it is in the eyes, in the heart, in the kidneys, so everywhere the thin, the narrow, the microscopic blood vessels are getting affected in the diabetic process. So that is what makes diabetes nasty. And whatever, I share a trade secret with you. Whatever a doctor doesn't know what is the cause of this, we control it. And whatever we know what causes the problem, we cure it. So that is why still today in the year 2024, you never hear the term cure of diabetes. You only hear the term control of diabetes, right? And in the next elections that will come in 2028, you have two things. You have either the voter card or blood sugar. If your blood sugar level is high, they'll allow you to vote anyway. Then it is confirmed you are an Indian. Okay. And all non-diabetics will be considered bohiragoto, from outside. So everybody who carries an Indian Aadhaar card and is a non-diabetic will be held with a lot of suspicion. So be careful. That will be the other problem of maintaining normal blood sugar. But our biggest problem is in India, remember, we do not get that much of type 1 diabetes, which happens in young age. So our diabetes is type 2. What is type 2? Is the problem that happens in older age. So we have people becoming diabetics in 40 plus, 50 plus, etc. It's almost unheard of in the Western world, people becoming diabetic at 60s. So it happens with us. Is it related? A very important question is it related to the carbohydrate overload? Because given, diabetes is also, there is research going on that diabetes is also called a political disease. You know why? Because we have been through, look back our history for the last century. We have been through a century where, every 2 years used to have a famine. There was the socio-economic state of the country was desperate. So poorer the country, more the incidence of famine, people just survive on cheap carbohydrates. Stuff yourself with that. Okay. Now, this is something that have our genes become a bit crooked because our previous 1 or 2 generations had a very tough time in providing nutrition for themselves. We have overloaded and our programming, maybe metabolic programming has got upset because of that. Next slide. So obviously, diabetes wreaks havoc in society. The most famous diabetic is the gentleman on the right-hand side who passed away at the age of 39, I think 1902. And Swamiji's average blood sugar level used to be 550, right? And there was no cure because it's only 10 years after he died that the first insulin, so that is a newspaper headline, I think one of the breakthrough days of human medicine, because we think of diabetes as a pretty average disease now. You're at home checking blood sugar, etc. So if you are, next time you are in Toronto, visit the wards of Toronto General Hospital, where people used to die of diabetes. Children were dying, like what we saw in COVID and plagues. And people, mothers were howling, people were dying of hyperglycemia. There was no cure. So till I think 1923, when Banting and Best comes out with the first shot of insulin, that we had some avenue for sugar control. But then again, I think we have to very critically answer the question today, that what is causing it? Can we preempt it? And can it be prevented? Because look, implanting insulin pumps, going in for pancreatic transplants is still only fighting with the diabetes, but we have to learn to prevent it even before it happens. Next slide. Very similar to diabetes is the problem of blood pressure. Why is diabetes and blood pressure similar? Because once again, what is blood pressure? Why are we worried that, instead of 120, it is 160 or 180? Why are we worried? We are worried because of what does it imply? What it basically implies is that our blood vessels, instead of being very soft and supple and compliant, they are hardening up. They are losing their elasticity. So the resistance. So why is a doctor worried when you have 160, 70, 80 blood pressure? Because it is like you walking uphill all the time. The heart is having to pump against increased resistance. That is what makes the doctor worried. And if the blood vessels are subject to higher pressure constantly, you get these problems of the thin vessels in the brain blowing, the cerebral hemorrhage and stuff like that. So very similar to diabetes is the hypertension is important because of its effect on the organ systems. And the three commonest organs affected by diabetes: heart, kidney, and brain. Next slide. Coming out of our good friends in Framingham is this business of obesity, right? Why is obesity important? It is not just a matter of whether you look smart, unsmart, whether the little bit of a belly suits you or not. It is not that question. We have to remember that the fat underneath our skin or elsewhere in the body is also an alive organ. It is circulating a lot of hormones and things all the time. So it is not just a question of vanity or appearance. So there are very many ways of measuring your body fat and obesity. Probably the easiest for me still today is to measure your BMI. Most people know what's our weight and heights are. So if you know your weight divided, you don't even calculate it nowadays. Just go to Google, put in your height, weight, and type BMI. It comes out straight away. There are many. There are at least 20 other indices, a little bit more complex. And even easier is next time you went into Pantaloons or somewhere to buy a ready-made trouser, please be careful about your waist size. Okay? Don't blame the wife for washing your clothes, or don't blame your laundry and say everything has shrunk, I haven't become fatter. So if you, what is, you talked about women's health, Renukaji. So if you have a woman's waistline approaching 35, 36, and in a man around 40, please take caution. Okay, that is a very simple, very crude health indicator, but it bears out very well. So this is something we can watch ourselves. Next slide. A couple of minutes on exercise. I think you also mentioned exercise. Now, basically, when you look at exercise, whenever we have a sort of a weight imbalance, you put on weight, etc., the broader idea is that we are burning more fuel than what we are consuming. Okay. So, for example, if you know that you are not driving for the next 3 days, you would never put your full tank car in the garage and then say, lock the garage up. You would seldom do it. But we do it to ourselves. The heaviest meal you have in the day is your dinner, and then you go to sleep. Now that is an illogical exercise, Because why do you labor yourself with that much of food stuff, and then you've gone off to sleep when your BMI would be at the lowest? So essentially, it is like an income expenditure balance. So have a basic idea about exercise, because and an idea that what form of exercise burns how many calories. If you just do a walk is a very good form of exercise. If you walked for an hour, you would burn about 300 to 400. If you ran, that 300 will become 600. If you swam, it will still be 600. If you are very energetic in the gym, you are doing the rowing machines, all four extremities are working, it will be more, 800. And people, I can't do that. People who do this aerobic jumping for about half an hour or more, that burns a lot of calories, 1,000 plus. So have an idea that when you calculate your dietetic balance, how much I do and how much I burn. Next slide. Now this is what I call a morning walker's dilemma, because for a long time I used to stay in Bhawanipur by the famous chai shops, and early morning, as I had got up very early morning, mugging for some exam, I used to see this whole procession of people going towards Victoria around 5:30 in the morning, and the whole procession coming back at about 7 o'clock. And I identified a few people, and I could seldom see anybody ever losing weight. Okay, now why does that happen? You go for a morning walk, you burn 600 calories. On the way back, you pass the tea shop, you take 2 samosas, 400 calories. You've had 2 jalebis, another 400 calories. You've had a nice thick tea, sweet tea, 100 calories. So what you have actually done is you have breathed some fresh oxygen, fair enough, but at the end of the morning walk, every day you are giving yourself a gift of 400 extra calories. So my advice is you rather stay in bed. So if you did that, if you just simply stay in bed, you will be in an energy neutral situation. People get very upset when you say this. The Gurdwara Chai Wala is a very good friend of mine. So he has asked me never to show this slide again. He said this slide should be banned. But consider this, that under the very good intention of losing weight, don't get into this trap. Okay, next slide. You see, this is a very busy slide. Just focus on one thing, where we think, talking about diabetes, carbohydrate and all this stuff, about say 50 odd percent, 55% of the Indian population is about half vegetarian, non-vegetarians. But either way, because of our demography, because of our history, because of our economics, for the good part of last 2 centuries, we have been overloading ourselves with carbohydrates. And even when we were in school, in biology, it was a standard teaching that in the average Indian diet, 60% of your calories could come from carbohydrates. No, never. So this is something we know of today, that please keep your carbohydrate intake to at about 40% if you can, not more than 50%. So if you are, this you can't read it out, I can give you an email later on, that supposing at our stage of life, we require 1700, 1800 calories per day, about 40% should come, 45% through carbohydrates. Protein should certainly be 15% plus, and there are certain fats. Fats are very rich in energy. Fats, you like it or you lump it, fats will end up being almost 30% plus. In certain diets, it may also go to 40%. But the new poison, there is a book come out last year. They say the new poison of the 20th century is actually sugar. Far more harmful than any other poison you know of. So carbohydrate restriction, I think, in Indian diet is very important. Next slide. So if you look, it's a chamber of commerce. I should not ever explain a balance sheet to you. Commerce was my weakest subject. I've only done 2 commerce classes in my life. So our balance sheet is what is it? What are we trying to do with ourselves? What are we trying to do? You are trying to maintain a BMI of around 22 to 25. You are trying to maintain a waist configuration, as I told you, less than 40 for men, 35 for women. We will need to take 1,500 calories in a 24 hours. And when you read, a lot of people read labels nowadays. So we take in about 60, 70 grams of protein, about 300 grams of carbohydrates, about 50 to 60 grams of fats, right? So there is a 449 formula. 1 gram of carbohydrate gives you 4 calories. 1 gram of protein gives you 4 calories. 1 gram of fats gives you 9 calories. So it's a 449 formula. If you know that, you can calculate your own calories yourself. Next slide. Now, what is our idea about oil? Oil is almost like a political party. People go on changing sides from one shade to another. Ever since I've been on medicine, I've probably heard about 5 different stories about oil. Where is the party line today? We doctors can certainly be accused correctly that, we've been changing our stance, shifting. Currently is that there is something called the total oil intake. So total oil intake per head in a month should be about 500 to 600 milliliters, right? So, you are in, so Bangalide niye bola hai, je Bangalira mach diye tel khaye na tel diye mach khaye ar ki. We have, Bangalider khub dukkho ache, je amra prochur mach khai, Japaniraও মাছ খায়, এস্কিমোরাও মাছ খায়, তাহলে বাঙালিদের কেন হার্টের অসুখ হয়? তো আমি একটা বাংলা জনসভায় বলেছিলাম, কারণ আমরা তেল দিয়ে মাছ খাই, ওরা মাছ দিয়ে তেল খায়. That's the difference, right? People like Eskimos, they've never seen what oil looks like. The only oil they get from whales and sharks, they preserve it to light their lamps. Why do Japanese not take oil? Because they never had oil. Pearl Harbor happened because there was oil embargo. Japanese have sushi because for 1,000 years, there's not a drop of oil anywhere near Japan. They cannot grow anything. There is no oil. So that is where their diets are like that out of necessity. Now we cannot change overnight. So have an eye on the total intake. There is definitely an idea. There is something called saturated fats, which is more troublesome. So have a balance. Whether you go for corn oil or vegetable oil or the great Bengali favorite of mustard oil or whatever, total amount, and it is always better to mix and match. Like never vote for the same party twice. So mix and match, and that will help you. You can't get into a chemistry class every day, how much of saturated, how much of unsaturated. And for some of us who like fried food, a little bit of fried food, we are all addicted to it. And avoid refrying, please. Every time you fry something, it's a chemical reaction. So if you have fried once you fry fat, it changes from cis fat. There is something called cis fats and trans fats. Trans fats are harmful. The moment you fry and go on refrying, the oil looks to be the same, it looks blackish. Why does it look blackish? You're having more trans fats in it. So avoid that. Next slide. Now, there's been a whole lot of, water down the Ganges on milk. Now, is milk important? To me, milk is very important in India for women's health, for general health, with more than 50% of the population being vegetarian. It's an invaluable source of protein. But what we have to remember is there is a little bit of trade-off, because milk gives you a very high quality of animal protein without actually cutting up the animal. but milk has a whole lot of saturated fats. So when you go for skimmed milk, and milk is a huge source of vitamin D, right? You can't get into the rural community or the low income households and starts asking them chewing vitamin D right, left, and center. And osteoporosis, women's health, protein intake, milk in the Indian diet is very important. And before we start making, fashionable statements about milk, we must remember, if possible, today I think more and more skimmed milk is available. Semi-skimmed is widely available. Semi-skimmed, what is semi-skimmed? Basically, you fractionated the fat away. Protein remains the same, you fractionated the fat away. So milk remains very important. Next slide, please. Now, Mr. Khaitan already mentioned my favorite subject about the eggs. And I did a video about eggs. It has some 10 lakh people watching it. I thought I'll become an egg seller after the end of it. Rather than from medicine, it would be more profitable. The egg lobby made me do 2 more videos after that. Now, basically, look, don't get too hyped up about eggs giving you too much protein. One egg gives you less than 10 grams of protein. You're allowed 60, 70 grams a day. So you're not going to overdose on proteins if you took 1 or 2 eggs. Trouble with eggs is, as you all know, is with the yellow, the cholesterol, because there is a bit of saturated fats in the cholesterol. But by and large, the article you were referring to, Time magazine, so the summary, what Time magazine said, I think it was in 2020 or 2019 when they came up with the article, they said was, if you are keeping average health, you do not have a lipid profile disorder or problems. If you took, say, when American takes egg, I don't know how many eggs they take, probably 4 or 6 a day. But if you had an egg a day or 2 eggs a day, probably in average health, you will be okay. If you already had a lipid profile which was looking a little irritated, then probably you cut down on your cholesterol. So eggs, once again, and the greatest thing in eggs is that the human brain still doesn't know how to adulterate eggs. So it is one of the foodstuff that comes to you. You can add water to milk, but you can't water to eggs. So the egg is one thing that it's sort of a natural stuff which is bound to reach you unadulterated. Next slide. And whenever we discuss diet, remember one thing, that one of the greatest curses of humanity is that, we were created, say, 120,000 years ago. Our body, our one stomach, one esophagus, 6 feet of small intestine, 4 feet of large intestine, we still have the same digestive system we had 120,000 years ago, and we have changed our diet probably 121,000 times. People look at agriculture and think, we were always having rice and wheat. Where was rice and wheat? Rice and wheat has only come in 10,000 years. So what the hell were we eating for 110,000 years before that? And that is how your liver never knew that there would be fats coming from outside. That is why you get gallstones. Why does everybody get gallstones? Because it is forced to put out more bile juice. Liver never saw that you will be having such a luxuriant supply of fats from all over the place. So we are really a bit of an outdated machinery. So till the next version of this iPhone comes out with the stomach, liver, pancreas redesigned, we are going to have this problem. And maybe teleologically that explains the incidence of diabetes and fatty liver, and people correctly say now it's all one and the same disease. So remember this, that before we go on radicalizing our diet every 5 years, we have to think a little bit. Next slide. Now, when we talk about a health checkup, I'll probably stop at the end of this slide. Now, when we talk about a health checkup, what do we mean by a health checkup? So, with a view to overall health and with a view to cardiac health in general, I think today it is very important because we live in a metabolically vulnerable situation with diabetes, lipids, cholesterol, all these things. So it's a good idea that by the time we are in the wrong side of 40 or 45, do have your blood parameters checked twice a year. Like you have an accountant who does I'm sure all of you have accountants, right? I don't need an accountant. I can do it on my mobile phone because I don't have that many zeros. So the question basically is that like you have an accountant looking at your money, please sit once or twice a year and have a body weight and dietetic review. Dietitians are becoming an extremely critical part of the treatment. You cannot, honestly speaking, you cannot go to see a dietitian without seeing a dietitian. If you gave me a choice, I would see the dietitian first and then the dietitian. The dietitian still only has 6 tablets to play with. The 7th tablet has not yet been discovered. So have a diet review. I think that is very critical in our times. Blood pressure, you can do it at home. The machines you get at home are pretty useful. You can do it twice a month if you want to. Usually take a morning blood pressure. Why do you take a morning blood pressure? Because that is the time the body is revving up to work. That is the time the body is revving up to work. And all of us, remember 2 things. Blood pressure fluctuation is normal. You have a blood pressure because it was meant to fluctuate. Otherwise, nature would have created a steady output pump, like your hose pumps at home. So heart pumps up and down, systole and diastole. So it will fluctuate. Look at the morning blood pressure. And always good to monitor your body weight at least once a month. Okay. We can, over the next few minutes, answer some of your questions. I'll show you one last slide. Please skip the others. Tobacco is very interesting because a great contribution to medicine is being done by the IPL. The IPL is producing about 25,000 oral cancers for every IPL tournament. Every IPL tournament, at a conservative estimate, thanks to all your, what is it? I don't even know the names. Manpasand, Pan Parag, whatever. We made an estimate that every IPL produces about 25 to 30,000 oral cancers. So I hope the likes of BCCI builds cancer treatment hospitals along with the world's second most sort of prosperous sporting league. Go on to the last slide. I'll tell you where to stop. Advance. I'll do these later. There's only one last slide I wanted to show you. Move on. Now this is, please go to the last slide. Now when you think of cardiac checkups nowadays, this is a very useful checkup which is available in our cities. It's available in Kolkata. The moment you are 50 plus, if you have any of the conditions like diabetes, lipids on treatment, without fail, what a doctor thinks today is not important. What a doctor sees today is far more important. So this is one modality which up to a 90% accuracy rate will detect your coronary disease. Okay? And people get annoyed that why do we need a ECG? Why do we need an echo? Why do we need an angio? Because it's looking at different things. And heart is the only mobile organ in the body. But for public consumption, like you've been on diabetic treatment, you've been on hypertensive treatment, you see your doctor very regularly, do suggest to your doctor that, look, I've never had this is a checkup tool. This is not a treatment tool. If you ever get a problem with a CT, you have to have the normal angio, then get treated. But this is proving to be a lifesaver in picking up disease in the asymptomatic stage. So keep it in mind. Go on, please. Go on.
Percutaneous.
Go on. Go on. Go on. Now this is the this is the last slide. I've given you a lot of bad news this evening. People dying, heart attacks, etc., etc. But the truth of life is something a little bit different, right? The truth of life actually is that as awareness increases on one side, and as we are like the fixers, we are like the plumbers. So as the plumbers and fixers get a little bit better at their jobs, what is the balance? The balance of life is that human longevity is actually increasing. So for those of us who have lived out 2024, in 2025, your longevity will increase by 3 weeks. Every year you are alive, next year your longevity increases by 21 days, right? And by unofficial data right now, our current dispensation doesn't allow you to have a census. The only things we are allowed to count are the votes. But if you actually did a census right now, what separates, say, when we became independent, Sare Jahan Se Acha, etc., 1947, 15th of August, our average life expectancy was 42 years. Yeah, 45 for men, 39 for women. 39 for women. 45 years of life expectancy, and we had 13% literacy rate in 1947. Today, we are perhaps the only country in the world who, in a matter of 7 decades, have increased our longevity 70%. And as per the ground data that ICMR has done recently, so don't be in a rush for green cards, because what separates you and United States right now is a life expectancy of 3.5 years. The life expectancy of India has just moved into the 7th decade. It's for the first time ever in the history of our country that we've seen people having a median life expectancy of 70 years. US is 75, 76 years, 75, 76 years. And if you are very serious and you want to be alive, I don't know why, but if you really want to be alive for 100 years, you have to go to Japan, and there's a little island called Okinawa. 90% of people of Okinawa are all centenarians. They all live for 100 years over there. Okay? So this is something, this is the balance. This is where the health balance stands today. That no matter how angry you are with the like of us, the doctors, it is not doctors, it is the healthcare workers. India's maternal mortality rate has improved by 300%. Our infant mortality rate has improved by 400%. And honestly speaking, I for one, when we were in medicine, we never ever dreamt of this day, that the day would ever come. We are probably the only Southeast Asian country right now which can actually say that Malaysia may be a little ahead of us, that we have an average life expectancy of 70 years plus. So ladies and gentlemen, we haven't done that badly after all. So if you have any questions, please ask us. Thank you.
So what a wonderful talk. I think we are all so much educated, and how heart, liver, diabetes, etc. all touch each other. A lot of things that are going around is don't have rice if you are diabetic, don't have a mango, but some say that the glycemic index in a mango is lower, so you can have a mango. It's all confusing. So actually speaking, while you said go to a dietitian, but on the broad facts, since we are all suffering from the heart disease, the all kinds of hypertension and diabetes, what would be the best course?
Look, I think people like me, we have a great advantage. That is, we are expected to be stupid and simple, right? So I'll tell you something very simple. Sweetest whenever you have something that tastes sweet, without a doubt, the glycemic index is high. Sweetness comes from fructose. So simplest the sugar, what is sugar? What is basically sugar? In a chamber of commerce, as you think about money, sugar is the body's natural currency for energy. It is what coal is to a steam engine. And when we were devised by nature, the easiest fuel that our body can burn is sugar. The simplest fuel is sugar. The body is lazy. You give it sugar. You see, unless you are diabetic, the trouble is body loves sugar. Body does not know how to get rid of sugar. It does not. It is only in your state of diabetes, when already you are building up a positive balance, that you will start excreting sugar in the urine. So what happens is, when you've had a big meal, etc., you've gone to sleep after that. It is like your currency conversion. So you may have had a fat-free meal, but your sugar is changing into fats. So interconversion is very easy. Now, in terms of sugar control and diet, first of all, anything that tastes sweet has a high glycemic index. Don't go for the fine print of it. So you love a mango, your blood sugar is very, have a mango, but in limited amounts. Somebody's given you like 4 Alfonsos, you need not gobble them up in the same evening. Share with us. Share with us. Okay? With rice. Now, rice is another natural curse, because the polished rice, whenever you polish rice, you increase the glycemic index, and you've taken away the fibrous content of rice because the husk is missing. So the glycemic index is to the fiber content is altered. So I have great difficulty in taking brown rice and all that. Some people have habituated themselves in taking. So yes, these are the positive. Glycemic index is a fairly good thing for you to look at. It's a fairly good thing for you to look at. One thing that, ma'am raised in the beginning, which I didn't discuss, I'll just spend 1 minute on it, which is heart disease in women. First of all, I'm not saying this to flatter you, but remember that the physiology in a woman is 5 times more complex than a physiology in a man. Because starting from your age of puberty, right up to menopause, the complex interactions of the estrogenic and the progesterogenic hormones, in the male physiology, there isn't anything like it. We are a very simple, crude piece of machinery, right? So you are not only nurturing life, in you is the system to create another life with all its fine tuning inside. And we should not look at the estrogen, progesterone as only as puberty, menopause, childbirth, pregnancy. Yes, those are direct implications. All these things are directly related with all other health aspects. Okay. Of great importance in India is abrupt increase of weight in women by the time they are late 30s or early 40s. More than half of it is contributed. People who have like PCODs, polycystic ovary syndromes, people who have the hypothyroidism in women is very complex. So in other words, do get yourself checked up. Because if a man comes to us and say, I put on weight, you can safely say that you are putting on weight because you are lazy. You are eating far too much and walking far too less. You cannot make these assumptions in a woman. You cannot jump the gun so easily. So you need more detailed medical attention, especially at that time of life. Menopause is a very, very, very important stage in a woman's life, because it makes you more exposed to metabolic problems, osteoporosis, a lot more stuff. The other thing is that as women are catching up with men in most other things, starting from cricket to warfare, you have almost caught up with us in heart disease, almost. So that we want to maintain our popularity in the meetings, we give you a 2% grace right now, but very shortly that 2% grace will not be there. Will not be there. And in Indian society, for all of us, male of gentlemen or not so gentlemen to realize is that we are terribly, terribly selfish. I once did an audit that in my hospital, if I looked at for every 1,000 health checkups that was done, how many of them were women? For every 1,000 health checkups, the women getting health checkups were 15, 1-5, right? 1.5%. So that shows how selfish we are. I, in my clinic, after an operation or whatever, after the first checkup, I never allow the chap to come and see me without the wife's health report. Right? Okay. So the health checkup in women, for God's sake, check yourself up. It is a complete misnomer that women's diabetes appears late, hypertension appears late. Not at all. Not at all. And when you are in the urban setting, urbanization is a risk factor. You and I suddenly can't go out and lie down in the paddy fields tomorrow morning. That is absurd. So get yourself checked up. A health checkup is as equally important for a woman as it is for a man. Diabetes, cardiac problems on record is detected far later in a woman than in a man. We do about, say, 2,000 heart operations, etc. a year. All India, all over the national statistics, the results of treatment in women are much worse than in men, much worse. You know why it is much worse? Because of late detection. So you need, the same way I need, all of us need, please be aware, it's not enough to send your son or husband for a health checkup. Please check up yourselves as well. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
But be brief, the direct
you.
question.
You have suggested about the milk. Nowadays, the milk which is coming in the market, whether it is skimmed or whether it is double toned or whatever, but do you think that is a pure milk which we should take? And is it going to give protein to us? Or we should switch on to chena and paneer?
Well, you
and
could do.
curd.
Yeah, you could do. I mean, when you have paneer, etc., you do get the protein. Then a lot of people have whey protein and stuff like that. But probably milk makes the consumption, and I'm not pleading its case, but probably it makes the consumption easier.
Yeah.
Chena and paneer are absolutely valid. And by and large, I'm not simply advocating because Amul is advertising like mad. Every other cricket team is sponsored by Amul nowadays, so looking a bit suspicious. But I think, by and large, they are of generally good quality.
And one more question that few people like me, I'm very fond of sweets, right? So when fig and dates, these are sweet things, and sandesh also. Which thing as a doctor you will prefer me to take that? And others also.
You see, your
Those who are
ability,
fond of.
like if you had 2 figs and 2 sandeshes, if you're non-diabetics, you're fine. But if you're diabetic, and it's a good idea, what you do is go through a trial. It is so desperately easy to do a blood sugar these days. Give yourself a trial. If you do a blood sugar at home, if you have 2 sandeshes, wait for 1.5 hours or 2 hours and do your own sugar. And then you'll get to know how much your system tolerates. If it tolerates, fair enough. So what is your PP desirable level? Please do not exhaust don't hit your body too hard. Try to keep your PP sugar If you go by the doctors, they are very liberal. They'll tell you 200, but I still think 200 pp is a bit on the high side. So stay on the lower side of 200. 170, 180 is acceptable.
And one more question, last question, that is about the depression. When one, say, suppose if the depression is there and taking the sugar, all of a sudden the depression is gone.
No, that is
Why is
called
that?
reward psychology. I'm not a psychologist. The trouble is, anxiety, depression has become a part of our lives. The chap who coined the term stress, a certain chap called Selby, he was refused the Nobel Prize 7 times. So he must have been in a lot of stress himself. But it's there, madam. What happens now is, I see your stress, you see mine. But do we analyze our own stress? If my wife ever saw me going back home at 7 o'clock in the evening in a happy frame of mind, her conclusion would be, I lost my job. Now, then she will get stressed.
But that stress is going to affect
You have
the
asked 3
heart.
questions, so no more questions.
Sir, can I ask?
I'll just allow 2 more questions because it's already 6:30. Yeah, one from you.
Sir, being the avid reader of all your YouTube videos and everything, I just quickly want to share one thing actually, because you are not just a medical practitioner, you also so much of interest in literature. Sir, poet John Keats, he started his career actually as a medical practitioner like you, and then he turned poets. Probably that would be so. Okay, sir. My first question is actually that can we lower the risk of heart disease with the help of vitamins and supplements?
The only vitamin vis-a-vis I shouldn't say the only vitamins. Vitamins are what? Vitamins are basically micronutrients. Okay. The only a lot of like vitamin A's for skin, B's for digestion. Vitamins are essential. The only vitamin with a direct correlation is vitamin D. And how vitamin D helps basically is through the lipid metabolism. Because, why I said cholesterol. Almost every other hormone of the human body is got cholesterol as the mother substance. So the cholesterol metabolism vis-a-vis the liver is all happening, and vitamin D is a very important part of it. So you will see that, during COVID, later on, vitamin D was also related to intrinsic immunity. And vitamin D is quite in focus nowadays. Trouble with vitamin D is what? Vitamin D is not water soluble. A, D, E, K are the 4 fat soluble vitamins. So vitamin D is not water soluble. So you have to, but these chewable tablets had made it a bit easy. And since we've had blazing summer, but by and large, people who are not, they're working indoors most of the day, they are very vulnerable for vitamin D deficiency. So vitamin D is in focus nowadays.
Okay, sir. And my next question is, sir, actually. Okay, thanks.
I think there are 2 more persons who want to question. Yeah, I'll go with you. You wanted to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
I'll give you an opportunity because you were the first person here, please. But be short.
How do we rationalize exceptions? Now look at me, I'm 82. Last November, I had a pacemaker. The day I wanted to consult the doctor in the evening, first he was terrified looking at me. Have you come alone? I said, yes. Do you live alone? I said, yes. What is wrong? No, please sit down. Then checked me up, tried to see the pressure. Machine is not working. Wait, etc. Then the assistant said, you first go to that room. Main surgeon's, main doctor's assistant is there. So he told me that you need to be admitted right now. I would not allow you to go back home. I said, you allow me, please, I have to plan my things. Anyway, next day I got admitted and operated. My pulse beat probably was around 38 or something. That's why they were terrified. Only the other, the earlier evening, I was moving and working and all that, I'm the secretary of the Asiatic Society. So I felt that there was some disturbance in the system, but I did not felt it terribly that so that I should go and consult. And now this is an exception. How do we rationalize these exceptions in a body system? Is it just exception, or is there
Look,
any?
you know, it's a good idea, but you know, you cannot really predict disasters. Now, what you had, it is like predicting a load shedding. Okay, so until and unless my good friend Sanjeev Goenka or his CESE becomes much smarter and gives you predictive warnings of frequent power outages, you won't. You know what you had? What you had is basically the heart generates its own electricity. So when we said the heart works from life until death, how is the heart working? How is the heart working? If you don't want your leg to move, will your leg move? It won't. It has the same muscle. Then how come the heart is working? Has any one of us given a command? Heartbeat, heart. You'll be bored stiff, you know, to say 70 times a minute, heartbeat, heartbeat. You don't. Because it has its own switching mechanism. It's like a Chinese light. So there is a switch that goes on at one portion, like the wires in our building, in our rooms, the nerves are carrying the electricity. And what happens is, you know, no matter how good and fit we think we are no different from a brick and mortar building. This building is made of brick and mortar. We are built of proteins. And both are decaying with time. Right? So like your house, which may be 30 years, 40 years, you see half the rooms, the lights are loose, the wires are not working. So similarly, the electrical conductivity in the heart fails because it has a age-related wear and tear. And why is it dangerous? Your doctor was so smart. I was listening to what your doctor said. The next time you should kiss him and hug him. Because if the doctor did not warn him, what is the big problem? If my heart rate is 38, it means your heart is beating once here and it's beating the next time after a long gap. And in that period of time, the brain is not getting any blood supply. So the commonest side effect is a cerebral stroke. So the heart will come back. Heart will come back. If I have a heart rate of 20, I will feel lightheaded, dizzy, I'll drop down. After a minute or half a minute, the heart will resume. But the person to take a hit will be the brain. And we are still very unsmart as far as the brain is concerned. Nothing. It's like skin disease. There are 2,000 diseases and 5 ointments. So that is why. And whenever, you know, probably you're examined slow heart rate and the doctor did exactly the right thing, told you that you have to have it fixed right. It happens. Why is it happening? It is because of wear and tear. No, you have 100 people sitting in a room. They may know or may not know. 100 people in a room basically means 20 of them have got cardiac disorders. There are 30 diabetics and 40 hypertensives. Now the question is whether they know or don't know.
Good evening, Kunal.
Hello.
Just clarification on one part of your presentation. Does the external factors, as you said, socio-economic conditions of our previous generations have changed our genetic? External factors do change genetic
Yes, of course.
properties?
Of course. You know, that's how giraffe got longer.
Okay.
That's how people are getting taller.
Okay.
That's how equatorial people are dark-skinned and non-equatorial people are light-skinned.
So lifestyle does change genetics.
Oh yes.
Oh, I thought it was okay. Thank you.
All the time. So there is, you know, because still there is a lot of curiosity that why in a certain pocket of the earth we've got such tremendous metabolic problems. And probably, you know, people say genetic, but the question is genes are being influenced. You know, the difference between me and a monkey is one gene. One gene. So it is the way that one gene was reprogrammed that we have developed into the, you know, the modern anatomical human beings, and that poor fellow has stayed as a monkey. You know, so it's shaping all the time. And what is happening? The crucial question today. The crucial question today is we have lived our lives, but what is happening in the next generation is a very crucial question. Is a very important question today. So it's either a legacy or a baggage. Now, which one is it? We've carried the legacy from our previous generations. So are we able to give a better health understanding and legacy to the next generation? We will probably give some tricks of the trade, some procedures, some operations, some smartness here and there. We probably will. But as a genetic pool, and the determinant genetic pool, mind you, is the mother's genetic pool, because it is their mitochondria which is important. Your or my mitochondria is not important. It is their mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of a cell. So it is the mother's mitochondria which is powering the cell. So it's going to be how our generations behave. If you track the behavior of a 15-year-old, 20-year-old today, they should be kept under a watch, because we've lived our life in transition. Our parents had it much tough. We've had an easy life, very easy life. We are the first generation of this part of the world who've had an easy life. Easy life was unknown in the last 250, 300 years. No generation has had an easy life. We've lived like zamindars. What we've done, we've mugged up a few books, given a few exams, learned a few trade. That's the only difficulty we've been through in our lives. So how the current generation behaves is going to be a very important question. Are they going to? Today we are all worried about diabetes. Our lives are it's a matter of, it's a temporal concept now. Whether it is n number of years plus minus 3, 4 over there, it's different. But a crucial question of every family and this generation is that how is the 20-year-old today is going to behave? Have they become smarter? I think time will tell by the time they are 40, 45 years of age.
Before ma'am proposes the vote of thanks, we would like to present a memento to Dr. Sarkar. I would request our chairperson of the Ladies Forum to do the honors and present the memento to Dr. Kunal Sarkar. Can we please have a huge round of applause? May I now request member of the committee of the chamber and member of the Ladies Forum of the chamber, Madam Shampa Ghosh, to propose the vote of thanks and conclude today's program.
Dr. Sarkar, Shri Khaitan, Srimati Shah, members of the committee, members of the Ladies Forum, guests and friends. It is my most pleasant duty to move a hearty vote of thanks to our guest-in-chief, Dr. Kunal Sarkar, Senior Vice Chairman and Chief Cardiac Surgeon of Medica Hospitals Private Limited, Kolkata, and Chairman of Kolkata Heart Foundation, for sparing some of his valuable time from his extremely busy schedule to address us today. Changing lifestyles in the so-called modern times have led to the growing burden of coronary risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, smoking, obesity, and physical inactivity. To reverse the impact from what I could gather from Dr. Sarkar's address, it is vital that we focus on our daily habits and actions around healthy lifestyle strategies. I once again would like to thank Dr. Sarkar for his enlightening talk on such an important subject. My thanks are due to the members and guests for attending today's talk. With these words, I request you to join me in carrying a hearty vote of thanks. Thanks to Dr. Sarkar with appreciative acclamation.
It's been a great evening, and once again, thank you for the opportunity. because it's not very often that on a weekday I get out of a hospital at this hour of the day. Thank you, man. But honestly, thank you for your insight and thanks for all the warmth. We'll remember it and carry it with us for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join us for tea, please.